Welcome to People Unplugged, the podcast from the creative team at People Unboxed. I'm Westy, Digital Director at People Unboxed. This is the People Unplugged podcast. Good afternoon, everybody. Great to see you again. This month, I'm joined by Aisling Lord, menopause consultant at Meno-ology. And if I've butchered that, I apologise. She'll give you a chance to put that right in a second. Ash is someone I've known for a while. She's a passionate advocate for menopause awareness and support, I think it's fair to say, and also dedicated to transforming workplaces into menopause-friendly environments. That's one part of it. The other hat she wears is offering personalised guidance on women navigating menopause, hopefully empowering them to sort of plan for this life stage a little bit proactively. So lovely to see you, Ash. How are you getting on?
Yeah, great. Lovely to see you too. We were just having a little chat. It's about 3 years since I've seen you at a learning exhibition. So thank you for having me on today.
No problem at all. So, well, let's start with that. Maybe we can get into how do we get to where we are today, and feel free to cover as much of that as you like. So, and then we'll get into the meat of the show, if that's all right.
Yeah, absolutely. So, as you said, Meno-ology, you didn't butcher it. You got it spot on. So the name Meno-ology is information and education around menopause. So Meno for menopause and ology for the knowledge piece. And why that exists today is because of mainly my own personal journey and my own research and findings as a 45-year-old lady faced with a medical hysterectomy, which I would be surgically menopausal after. I very quickly found out that there wasn't any real support out there where I could go to in terms of support group or education. Because it wasn't part of my curriculum when I was at school. Sure, we covered reproductive health, periods, the bees and the birds and the bees and the bees, and all down that road. But we never actually touched on menopause. So here I am faced with this dilemma that I'm definitely going to be menopausal because it's a surgical menopause. And I thought, where do I go? Where do I turn to? What even is menopause? And when my consultant started talking about hormones, I was completely bamboozled. And probably felt a little bit embarrassed as well, that how could I have twins, another child later, and not know anything about menopause? I mean, who am I? So decided that wasn't quite good enough to find myself in that position. And it wasn't actually good enough for any female. I decided to do something about it. I'm quite the catalyst. So when I get something between my teeth, I'm like, right, I'm going to make that happen. I'm going to succeed in that because it's for the greater good and something that, you know, many of us will benefit from as well. So I set about taking on extra education. I've always been a life coach, as you know, worked in learning development and HR. You know, I've been hanging about this space for 25 years. But now I specialize in women's health and women's hormones, and in particular menopause. So I did a menopause expert course, and I've also become affiliated with the British Menopause Society, which has been very good in informing me and where I get most of my information from. So as you rightly said, I'm here to plan for not the menopause, but your menopause, because every menopause is different. It's not as straightforward as the menopause. There's many different symptoms that people will get, people won't get. But also, we are the first generation, and I say we, you know, us ladies in our 40s, 50s, we're the first professional working ladies through menopause. And this is why we've heard so much about it. And we need that help and support. And I need to help and support employers as well to make those environments right. So that's kind of the passion, where it's come from, and why I'm sitting here today in front of you and your audience to talk about menopause.
Fantastic. If we can break the show down maybe into two parts, just based on what you've said there. So maybe we could start with supporting women, because that's obviously a big part of what you do. But then I'm also really interested into digging into educating businesses a little bit, and also giving them some ideas of where to get, what can they do to help, because there's a lot of noise going on around menopause at the moment, which is great, but a lot of that is, this is a really important topic. and then that stops, and it's like, okay, yeah, I get that, but what do I do with that? So if it's okay with you, we'll sort of like go in those sort of two directions, and I know you can wear both of those hats, which would be brilliant. So if we could start with the first one then, which is about supporting women that are, you know, either going through menopause or you know, or sort of premenopause at the moment, it's something that's on the horizon. Can you take me through some of the biggest misconceptions about menopause, maybe, and how do they influence women's experience of sort of in life or work? Because there's a lot of noise. Does that make sense?
Well, I think a good place to start is what actually is menopause.
Great.
Because, as I said, sat in that consultation, I didn't want to ask because I felt as a female, it's my right place to know. But
Yeah.
as I said, it wasn't included in the curriculum when we were doing physical health at school. So the menopause comes in three different stages, really, is the best way to think about it. It is a hormonal imbalance. So our brain is a hormonal fed machine. So when we talk about women's hormones, we talk about estrogen and we talk about progesterone. We also talk about testosterone sometimes as well, which is the male sex hormone, which is contributed to things like libido and things like that. And we do sometimes have that replacement therapy as well. But when we start menopause, that is when we see a decline of estrogen. And estrogen is really important. And we have estrogen receptors throughout our bodies. So in our brain, it regulates our temperature, it regulates our heartbeat, it regulates our protective layer in our skin, it regulates our liver, our kidneys, our urine, and how often and frequently we go to the toilet and things like that. So estrogen sends all the little signals to the brain as to what our body's going to do next. And understandably, when we have a decline in that, the signals go down and the signals drop off. So we start to experience a number of symptoms that will affect us. And these happen at various different times for different people. So when we are born, we're thought to have anywhere between 1 million and 2 million eggs in our body. And when they start to decline is through ovulation. So menstruation, and when we ovulate, before that, we lost our eggs through ovulation. And that's the start of menopause, which ironically, and please don't be scared anyone,
Look,
starts when we're 20. But we don't
right.
recognize it because we have millions of eggs, like I said. So
Sure.
it's, hey, it's no problem,
But
right?
the clock's ticking from that point is
The
pretty
clock
much
is
what you're
ticking.
saying.
Yeah,
Right.
the clock is ticking. But we have millions of eggs, so we're well
Right.
catered for. But it just depends how quickly they deplete. And how
Yep.
quickly they deplete is when we hit something called perimenopause, which is the stage before menopause. So we will have all the usual regular periods, menstrual cycles, but we kind of notice some changes where we're a bit more moody, where our breasts are a bit more tender, our periods could be all sorts of light and heavier, unwelcome, turn up, whatever they want kind of thing. And then we get lots of other symptoms. And just to bring it to life, I'm going to mention a few. We might get heart palpitations. We might get anxiety, imposter syndrome. We might have sleepless nights. We might have itchy skin. We might find it really difficult to process some foods and alcohols and things. We might get really itchy skin. We'll have all sorts of symptoms. If I said to you, there's
Sorry,
30 plus.
can I just this is, and you knew that I'd be absolutely fascinated. So
Great.
let me just pick up on what you just said there. So when you said a range of symptoms, and this is where the miseducation comes in, or the misunderstanding, or whatever you want to call that. It's well, people have hot flushes, right, and that's it.
Yeah.
Two of the things you've just described there are more mental things than they are physical things. You said like about anxiety and that. So I just wanted to call that out because
Yeah.
it's not just physical things, then, right?
No, exactly. So psychologically, during menopause, as I said, the brain is a hormone run machine. And when you have an imbalance in anything, think about driving your car down the road and you have an imbalance of air pressure in the rear back tire, then how's your car going to be driving? It's going to be a bit wonky. It's going to be a bit
Yeah,
off.
it's
It's
all
not
over
going
the
to.
place,
It's
isn't
not.
it? Yeah,
It's not going
hard
to
to control,
perform.
dare I say? Yeah.
Yeah, hard to control. Um, Not that I'm saying that perimenopausal
No, no,
women,
no. So that was my words, not yours.
um, are hard to control, but we find it hard to control
Yeah,
because one of those or many of those estrogen receptors are not getting enough estrogen, just like our car isn't getting enough air pressure in that
sure.
tire. We're not getting enough estrogen. So we become imbalanced and we become hormonally imbalanced. And that's when we start to get the hot flashes or the hot flushes, the anxiety, the imposter syndrome, the itchy skin, the really sore joints, the dry eye, lots of different things. And that's kind of a nice layman's term introduction into how that imbalance actually affects the body. And that's where we get the term menology, because it's um, menopause is a period of time. It's a period of
Right.
time. And that's a good thing to come on to next is how long does perimenopausal last for,
Yeah.
right? So we realize more and more every day it seems to be earlier, but the NHS say 40 to 45 is early onset perimenopause, but we are recognizing it as young as women as 35. And
And why is that getting? Is that to do with awareness, or is it actually getting earlier?
we believe, and there's not enough research to do with the study of endocrine disruptors. Now, what I mean by endocrine disruptors are things that are around in our environment. We live a very lavish life these days compared to, you know, women going back to the early 1900s. What I mean by lavish lifestyle is we have beautiful scented homes, we have really strong cleaners with chemicals in it. We put a lot of chemicals on our skin, in our hair. We wash our clothes with chemicals, very fragrant things. And we also have a lavish sort of lifestyle socially where we eat lots of different foods, we drink lots of different alcohols, and we all have to take account for the effect that's going to have on our hormones. It's actually going to diminish them and depress them somewhat. And our skin is a huge receptor for all of these.
Sure.
So things like, wearing gloves, buying more maybe naturally scented candles with, natural oils, or maybe using natural oils and a bit of cotton wool in the back of our radiator rather than having something chemical burned through our home. So these are all things that I've picked up on that I've been doing, and I'm thinking, gosh, why do I feel so this and why do I feel so that? And then when I look into it, and my research and my studies shows that things like this actually depress our hormones, even more so. So that's why we see earlier and earlier onset perimenopausal symptoms within our females. And I think it's really important. Can we stop perimenopausal symptoms? No, but we can delay them. So by educating today our daughters and younger females within our family, maybe to use less of or make better choices, organic choices, then we can delay those perimenopausal symptoms and we can actually lighten them a little bit as well.
So is that's one of the ways women perhaps can be slightly more proactive then? Because we've said realistically,
Yeah.
I'm going to tell a terrible story, but just summarising what you've said then. So almost from 20 onwards, this clock's ticking, right? And we sort of we found out about it now a little bit too late for some of us, but let's learn from those and let's see what we can do about it going forward. So, and I've got two daughters, one's 17, one's 19, who I would love them to. I'm sure they will listen back. So
Yes.
that's some. So people can effectively prepare both physically and mentally. Is that fair to say? So you've given me some
Absolutely.
examples of that, but what else can they do?
So big thing as well
Ash,
is,
by the way, this is really for my own personal benefit. So I've
of
got my, my,
course,
my, 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 my wife was 50 this year, and I said I've got two daughters. So trust me, this is a very female-heavy house. So I love the opportunity to ask all those questions that people just wouldn't ask. So I really appreciate
yeah.
it.
No, and I think it's fantastic because, as I said, my passion is awareness and spreading awareness and making it okay to talk about these things. Um, you know, Everybody born with ovaries will go through the menopause. It's not optional. We will go through it. So we really need to have an awareness and an education. Things that will help us plan for our menopause is education. Knowing what's coming, knowing how to prepare for it, knowing what to expect. That's the big thing. The next thing is nutritional guidance as well. Knowing what you're eating, knowing what you're putting into your body. So there's a thing called phytoestrogens, which mimic the estrogen in our body, and that's found in lots of foods that we can eat. Lots of nice winter squashes around this time of year, so including them in your diets. Lots of leafy greens, lots of berries, pomegranates, things like that. Also, lots of legumes and pulses have loads of phytoestrogens in them, and it really is eating from the garden. So things like whole foods are best for prolonging and getting through perimenopausal and menopausal symptoms. So really boosting our body with those phytoestrogens. Anything that comes in a box or a bag isn't whole food. It's wrapped up in a chemical itself, because the plastic is chemical, probably produced from some kind of petroleum. And all those things are going to have an effect on the food that's in there and then the food that we actually put into our body. So that's one of the things. And then the last thing is really physical movement. We are living for longer. We're around a lot longer. We want to be able to take those flights of stairs. We want to be able to carry our shopping. We want to be able to be self-helping as we move into our higher tens in our life, our 70s and 80s, because we will be around much longer now. So we want to be able to maintain muscle, because with estrogen and the receptors in our body, we have them in our muscles. So they deplete, they decline, and then we become weak. And how many times has your wife asked you to open a jar of pickles or a jar of jam in the kitchen?
Occasionally.
Occasionally.
But to be fair, when I do, she'll probably say that she'd loosened it first. But
Well, there's always that argument in this house as well. But that is a sign that our muscle is dissipating. So we
yeah,
need to keep the movement up, because muscle memory is key. So I'm not saying enter a weight building competition or anything
we're not
like
doing
that.
marathons this week,
Not
right?
doing
Yeah.
marathons. Yeah, just keep active, keep moving, lots of physical exercise and weight training as well to a degree. As I say, nothing too heavy, just keep those muscles flexible, moving, warm, and keep them there more importantly.
And actually, if people are already going through the menopause, is that too late, or will the changes you're suggesting there help their symptoms as well?
It's never too late. So to go back, because we were talking about perimenopausal,
Sure.
and the common misconception with perimenopausal is, oh, I'm through that now. I'm sure I've been perimenopausal for 2 years.
Yeah.
And it's like, try adding another 18 years. So perimenopausal can last for decades, not just years. So when we go through our perimenopausal transition, how we will know that we are now menopausal is we will stop having menstrual cycles for 12 months. And when we don't have our menstrual cycle for 12 months, we're menopausal. And then we are postmenopausal to the day we leave this earth. Now, estrogen doesn't come back. It doesn't magically come back. So we either need to continue with the phytoestrogens through our diets, or we need to have a hormone replacement therapy as well. There are lots of herbal remedies that we can have to balance the symptoms that we have. Things like, we may have heard of black cosh, which is a herbal remedy. We might have heard of St. John's wort for our mind and our mood and uplifting. We might have heard of evening primrose for those aches and joints that we get, particularly sore breast tissue and things like that. It can help with. We've heard of magnesium. These are all the buzzwords: ashwagandha, lion's mane. They all help, okay? They all help. But in terms of estrogen, it's going to be diet led, or it's going to be hormone replacement therapy.
And what's the if you can touch on this? So what's the latest research findings or emerging treatments? Is this just one of those things, or do you see, on the horizon, are treatments getting better? Or is there more research being done into this stuff? Because everything you've talked about so
Oh,
far really has been, us self-managing and thinking about what we eat and yeah. So where's that going? What's the research? There must be
we've
research into this, because it's not a problem
all
that's
the
going away,
time.
right?
Yeah, all the time, all the time. So, years and years ago, Paul, HRT and estrogen was derived from a pregnant mare's urine, so a horse's urine. We take the estrogen from that, wash it, clean it, and put it into a form of HRT, which is very lab-based and very chemically based. Today we have something called bioidentical hormone replacement therapy, which is derived from plants, such as all the plants that I've been mentioning,
Yep. Yep.
that mimic our estrogen in our body. So that shows how far it's come really, and that's in the UK. And that is definitely a huge and significant improvement, because back nearly 20, 30 years ago, there was a huge white paper produced on the effects of HRT and how it can actually enhance some cancers. Of course it will. If you have an estrogen led cancer in your family, in terms of your mothers or your aunties, and that was my own reason for having my hysterectomy, was my mother has ovarian cancer, which is an estrogen fed cancer, and the
So adding more is
hysterectomy
going to.
adding
Sure.
more risk. Yeah. So thankfully, I found that out, and I'm aware and I know, but all the healthcare professionals are aware of these, and they do add up the risks and make sure that if you are at risk of estrogen-fed cancers, then you won't be able to take some estrogen, because estrogen comes in many different formats. And I think that was one of the challenges I had as well. I was like, well, what is HRT? So
Yeah.
you have patches that you can apply to your skin. You have gels that you can apply to your skin. You have tablets that you can apply. There's some birth control methods as well that double as part of your hormone replacement therapy. So things like the Mirena coil that some of your listeners will have heard of before, is a progesterone release. So some women have progesterone and estrogen as hormone replacement therapy, and people who have hysterectomies might only have estrogen hormone replacement therapy. It can be quite complicated, but this is why we
That's
need
why
to
we're here. It's an
speak.
absolute
That's why we're
minefield,
here.
which is great to hear. I mean, if I could pick up on that, so who decides whether a gel or a patch, or is that down to each individual, like woman saying what she would prefer and what she finds easier, or are there medical reasons for each one?
Oh, definitely. There's a huge part of remembering, because we all have brain fog to a degree when we're perimenopausal, menopausal. I must admit, sometimes I do use it as a little bit of a, oh God, brain fog, I forgot.
Do you know? Actually, do you know? One of my questions. Sorry, I've massively interrupted you, but whilst it's fresh
That's
in my
fine.
mind, because I'll forget. I was delivering a course yesterday, and part of it was okay. And you can present that back, and I'm not going to mention any names. I'm protecting the guilty, shall I say? And two people went, "Oh, I'm menopause. I'm not good at this stuff." And it was a really straight. It was the first time I'd heard it used as I'd say as an excuse, but it wasn't an excuse. It was a. You know, because obviously I knew this conversation
Mm,
was coming up, and it made me think that in itself is a slightly. I didn't know where to go with it. So but you've just said it yourself. We
mm,
use that. Oh, that's the brain fog. It's menopause. That's just the way it is. And it
yeah.
was really interesting to see people actually use it as an excuse for why they couldn't do something. And really, what we were asking them to do was write some things up on a flip chart. So, and if that was, we'll come to how business can support things in a minute. But I just found it fascinating that that's almost become a bit of a, and it was said tongue in cheek, but
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. We'll save that maybe for in a minute, because when we talk about business support, we still need people to be able to do their job, right? But it just felt a bit of
Yeah.
an. It was a difficult one. Sorry, I don't know where I was going with that, but as
No,
you
and
said it,
I
I had
would
to.
like to pick something out from that. Firstly,
Please do.
I would like to say congratulations to all of you in the room, because you made that okay for those females to say. You
Yes.
created
Yeah.
that environment where they could say, oh, I'm menopausal. It might not be that their brain fog is getting in the way, but it might be the anxiety. If I have to stand up and write on that board, I might totally
Yeah.
forget what you said, or, oh, I've got imposters. Listen, I'm no good at this kind of stuff anymore. Because we really do focus on the brain fog a lot during menopause, but it's induced by lack of sleep, interrupted sleep, because of the lack of estrogen in our body. And I did mention magnesium earlier on. That is
Yeah.
a very good supplement, but a spray is better than a tablet, because we can't actually absorb magnesium into the body. But if we do have a spray, and we spray it on back of our knees before we go to sleep, we'll have a good sleep. And then that actually does improve our performance the following day if we have a good night's sleep.
Actually, there's something you just said there,
Mm,
and there's like light bulbs going on in my head all the time. But there's something you just said there, which is, I'm not any good at this anymore.
mm,
And again, just playing back what was said, it was bizarre. We should have been there because someone said, "Oh no, you've always been good at this stuff." Now we don't know what's changed in her world.
mm.
Do you know? We don't know. And you're right. So firstly, it's a very psychologically safe environment, which was lovely that they all had this conversation. But it's interesting that you said anymore. So obviously people are changing, so things are going to change. So maybe we should change gear a little bit now and think about exactly how do I support that as someone who's running a business, and I've got people in my team, or in this case there was 16, 17 people in the room and all varying ages. So some of them just sort of did that nervous and didn't know where to go with it, didn't know what to say,
Yeah,
which is
exactly.
fine. So what advice can we give business leaders or people that are listening to this to think, but I really want to create a safe environment for menopause to be, I say, normalised and discussed openly. And I don't mean discussed as in, right, let's have a 20-minute discussion about this, but for it to be something that we're not shying away from.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a good place to start is menopause is not a disability. And I know we were trying to get that passed as an act, and we didn't quite make it. But if we look at the term disability, it's a long-term physical or mental condition that affects you for as long as maybe months or years. And
Yeah.
menopausal and perimenopausal symptoms do last for decades, as we discussed earlier.
Mm.
So we do have to bear in mind that some of the symptoms of perimenopausal and menopausal can affect our colleagues in our workplace ongoingly. And remember that no two menopauses are the same. So, somebody might have, there's some statistics to say that 20% of women, I hate to say this, but we have an all right journey. Okay, we
Okay.
probably sometimes we don't notice too much until our periods stop and we go, oh, that's interesting. And then we realize that's a beautiful place to be, but that's only 20%. Then we
Yes.
have 20% of females that a horrendous time where they have every symptom recognised by the British Menopause Society. Not only do they have those symptoms, they have them on a severity scale of 10 out of 10 most
Yep.
days, which is so debilitating and very difficult to manage as well. Will supplements make a difference? Will phytoestrogens make a difference? We don't know. The imbalance is so uncouth that it's really, really difficult. And then we have the remainder, doing the math, 60%,
I
that
was doing it in my
has
head.
manageable symptoms, manageable through education, knowledge, workplace supportiveness, things like that, diet, physical exercise. So that's kind of a typical, if there is such a thing, breakup of the various levels of
Yeah.
impact that we're dealing with in the workplace.
So we're not talking
And
about a one size fits all at all, are we?
gosh,
So it
no,
is when I say what do I need to do when I guess the answer to that is it depends, right? But anyway, sorry.
yeah. And I think it's really important that we bear that in mind as
Yeah.
employers, that it's not the same for Jill as it was for Jane. Okay, it can
Yes.
be very different. And people quite often use that example. Well, I'm menopausal and I don't feel like that. She's making it up. And it's like,
Right.
not quite, because it's not your menopause, it's her menopause.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, we need to prepare for different people a little bit differently. Where we should start is breaking the taboo down, make it a conversation. So a coffee menopause chat's a good place to start, making sure that people know that you're prepared to recognise it within your workplace. The other ways of recognizing it is making sure you've got a HR policy in place that supports menopausal women in the workplace. Another way is a bit more difficult to do, but not so much when we were pushed into it during COVID prematurely, is the flexible working.
Yeah.
Now, I am up with the lark, my golden hours, my most productive, 5 a.m., 6 a.m., 7 a.m. My goodness, my workload is just slashed. After that, things take a bit of a dive.
Sure.
So if you have an environment where you work and employ people that can allow people to come in who are perimenopausal, who've had real struggle sleeping or who are up really early and probably going to be going to bed or falling asleep on the sofa at 5 p.m., if you can let them work earlier, then this is a good thing to do because they're going to be more productive, they're going to be more focused, and they're going to get things done, they're going to feel much better. And also the flexible working and working from home. Imagine someone has, those symptoms that 20% of ladies who are really struggling, they've got heavy periods, they've got migraines, they've got itchy skin, they've got acne, they've got joint pain, they've got back pain, they've got urinary tract repetitive infections that are happening. They're probably not going to feel too comfortable being in a workplace in a meeting where they have to, run to the loo every 10, 20 minutes, or, they are in so much pain that they're taking painkillers to relieve them from that joint and muscular pain that they get, or they're having brain fog where they constantly want to look at notes. Let them look at notes. I've got notes in front of me today because I know I might forget. And I don't want to have a moment where I forget on a podcast what I'm actually talking about. And we forget things really simple, like, we've just said, hello, Westy, hello, Ashley. And in 2 minutes' time, if your name wasn't there, I'll go, God, what's his name again?
Now I confused you because you called me Paul earlier. No, it's very right. Go by either. I'm just trying to confuse things.
It can be a second. You could ask me what last year's budget was, and I'll tell you, and then you'll ask me again, and I'll go, I have no idea.
Yeah,
I have no idea. So things like having notes is really supportive.
It's fascinating stuff. So how do I? You said you have to have an HR policy in place, or you should have an HR policy in place.
Should have.
I mean, yeah. So what does that actually look like then? Is that right? Let me take a step back because I love the fact you said it's not a disability. Because if someone has a physical disability, we make reasonable adjustments, and we do that as businesses. We do that, but I guess the onus is on. I'd like to think anyway. The onus is on me as a business to put, again, reasonable adjustments in place that are supporting those women. Is that what you're seeing in businesses, or are we seeing it where, well, if they speak up, then we'll do this? So it should be the other way around, right? The support should be there before you have to put your hand up and say, I need help with this. Is that what you're actually seeing?
So I'm seeing the latter, where people are saying if they come to us and speak to us, we then do something about it. But we want to change that. So in a recent survey, 40% of employers in the UK do have a menopause policy in place, and that tends to be your bigger employers on, just to put into a bit of reality. I said to someone the other day that I used to work with years ago, oh, this is what, because they were like, oh, how are you? And I was like, this is what I do now. And I said, oh, if you ever need help in your workplace, let me know. And he went, doesn't apply to us. We only have 3 women.
Oh, ouch.
And I was like, but you have 3 women. You have 3 women who have ovaries who will definitely be, and even more so, being the minority in a workplace, and perhaps people not understanding who don't have ovaries what you're going through is kind of a bit of it's a no-brainer. Like, you're not going to want to work there, you're not going to want to stay there, you're not going to want to say anything.
So let's pick up on that. So what are the potential consequences, do you think, for businesses who, they'll say, fail to prepare and offer support? What does that look like? Obviously, I'm assuming attracting the right talent for a start and the culture, but I'll let you pick that up. So what are the consequences for those people to turn in a blind eye to this stuff?
There's kind of 2 sides, really. One is attraction and one is retention. So when we look at attraction to our business as an employer, we want to attract the right talent. And as I said, we are the first generation of professional women who are, building our skills, building our experiences. We see lots of women on boards. We see lots of executive women taking, big responsibilities and accountabilities within the workplace. And they're there because they have that experience, the qualifications and the criteria to be there. And it's a huge loss not to have them there. So things like the symptoms that we covered already, the imposter syndrome, the low mood, the sleepless nights, can really put women off coming to work. In a survey in the NHS recently, 10% of women considered giving up their jobs because they found that there wasn't enough support in the workplace. Between 6 to 8, a huge proportion of them took 6 to 8 weeks off sick, which is classed as long-term sick in the workplace because the employer wasn't actually supportive. So what we need to look at is retaining the females in our business who are professional, who have got the experience, have got the criteria to take on more responsibility, to take on more accountability in the workplace and appreciate what they're going through. So things like including in your policy who you actually work with, whether it's mental health first aiders, whether it's employee assistance programs, whether it's people like me at Meno-ology providing training, if you've produced any business menopause champions in your business who can signpost, very akin to mental health first aid, very akin
Yes.
to that.
Yeah.
And also thinking about your environment. If your employees wear a uniform, what's it made of? We talked about these endocrine disruptors. Is it viscose? Is it polyester? Is it cotton? Can I breathe? Do I definitely have to wear it? Every time I wear it, I feel like I'm in a furnace. My skin's itching. You know, I'm ready to go on fire. Is this fair to ask me to do this? How is the temperature?
Do you know, as
in the
you're saying
office?
that, I've just said that again. I can only apologise because,
No,
as you
you're
said that, I
fine.
said, that's blooming obvious. Now you've laid that out. That's obvious, right? Because we're saying itchy skin, we've got temperature control, we've got what's that uniform made out of? What's the environment like? Have we got the and that's simple stuff. You'd argue, but
You would argue.
now right, but you just. That's never been on my radar. I wouldn't even consider it. And and I'll put my hand up and say that's my lack of understanding, lack of training, lack of awareness, I guess, which comes back to what you're saying is let's just get people talking about it. Let's raise some of this awareness. So that's such an easy win.
And I was
So
speaking
I find it
yeah.
frustrating. I'm kicking myself because it feels like such an easy win, but it can make a big difference to so many people.
And I was speaking to some women in the emergency services, and they were explaining to me that the emergency services uniforms are just non-binary. They're not for males, they're not for females. So I've got a few more bumps than men, and I want to be comfortable, but it's just so uncomfortable. And when they're out on emergency calls and stuff, and they have unplanned visitors such as their period or a sweat or you know they can't have that in their workplace. They can't have that. So how do they prepare for that? But they have been sharing with me some great initiatives that have been brought in to their sector to make things like menopause much more manageable. But then into the environment, I think that's where I was going was, one minute I'm really hot, next minute I'm really cold. There's no pleasing us really, we're either hot or cold. But it's not about making the whole entire office really hot or the whole entire office really cold.
No.
It's about having a room. So things like lots of people are having menopausal rooms where it's a cool room or a hot room, and they can reach a really happy temperature for them. They can dip in and out. Obviously, the wise thing to do is to wear layers. So, if you do have a uniform, make sure you can layer it up or layer it down appropriately. Fresh drinking water, not lukewarm water from a tap. It needs to be appealing. We want to enjoy it. We need to drink about 2 litres a day as a perimenopausal or a menopausal woman. And also, if you have like a canteen or anything, let's go back to the whole food conversation. Let's go back to the
There you go.
phytoestrogen conversation and have all your, nice fresh food in there for everybody. For
Yeah.
everybody, not just
Yeah.
perimenopausal women, make it as nutritional as we possibly can. Because what we put into our bodies is what we get out. And if we're feeling great, we're going to do great things at work and our customers are going to be happy. So it's a full circle. And I'm sure I've left loads of really important bits out. I'm sure I have. But it's
Well,
enough maybe to feed people's creativity side and imaginations and make sure you really get your policy looked over and by CIPD. There's lots of good points on there and tips by someone like me. I've seen a few that said menopause affects people between 50 and 60. Steer away from that. We now know that and also sadly, lots of women have illness like Addison's disease or cancers or treatments that will actually bring that menopause physically forward as well. So can we actually put an age in our
In
policy?
our policy, no,
We've got to be
no.
very careful. Followed by it's typical that we could see, but then we have to be mindful that it could be absolutely anybody. Because I hate to use the phrase, but menopause is ovary failure. Is what
Fantastic.
it falls into. So anyone with, PCSO or any kind of ovary illness can suffer as well, just the same way as a perimenopausal woman would suffer.
Ash, I'm looking at the time and think we could record this for 2 hours, and because I have so many. But other people might want to listen to it, but you know what? I'm learning so much. So thank you. That's brilliant. If you've listened to the pod before, I always like to end on. Well, two things. So we're going to let you know. We're going to let people know in a minute where they can contact you for more support if they want that support, and how your business can help. Before we do that, let's a bit of a personal question for you. What's the ideal weekend look like for you?
Ideal
Oh, you're on the
weekend.
spot there.
Oh yeah, no. Ideal weekend is lazy breakfast on a Saturday, after I've been for my run, of course,
Okay.
because I probably should mention that menopause is not the end, it's the beginning. And in every other country, apart from Eastern countries, in Eastern countries, it's the end of all endings. It's like, no, it's not, it's the beginning. Let me tell you why it's the beginning. I shared with you, I was faced with this, um, consequences of going into surgical menopause. I was so worried, I was tearful, I was upset, understandably. Went through the hysterectomy, but before that, I got myself in shape. I started exercising, I started running, I started swimming. I became the best version of myself. And only recently I have competed in my first triathlon. So it is
Wow.
not the end, it is the beginning. I'm absolutely loving life and I crave exercise. I mean, I don't even recognize myself. That's how good it is. So if anyone's out there is thinking, that's me, I feel exactly the same, we can turn it around. We really can. There's lots and lots of positives. Education is just so underestimated when it comes to menopause. So yeah, take inspiration from me. I was so lazy. I was sitting on the sofa. I didn't really want to move because I was perimenopausal before. And then I educated myself and I came out of it on the other side and I'm just loving life. So I have to go for a run, Paul, on Saturday
Yeah.
morning. That's great because I get a little bit of a nosy, but I also do that. What can I see? What can I hear? What can I smell? What's going on? And
Nice.
take life in, and the real appreciation piece as well, which is really nice. And then I come back and I wake up all the kids and we have a really lazy breakfast, which is of course healthy. It used to be bacon sandwiches and sausages, but I don't do that anymore. I'm all about my Greek yogurt and my fruit, and I feel so good. It's brilliant.
Brilliant.
And then we kind of do a little bit of shopping, and then lovely wholesome dinner, movie. We have treats. I mean, we can't live like a monk all the time, can we? So I might have a couple of glasses of prosecco, big bucket of popcorn. And then Sunday is getting up and getting all the jobs done, ready for Monday. So yeah.
Sounds good to me. I love it, and I can. I can hear it and I can see it, and I know everyone else can. Your passion about making that difference is really infectious. So thanks again so much for your time. I
My
really
pleasure.
appreciate it, and for accommodating my ridiculous questions and my ignorance. I appreciate that. Actually, if people want to, why wouldn't they? So if people do want to contact you, learn more about what you do, where's the best way to do that?
So I think most people are going to be watching this on LinkedIn. So my
Yep.
LinkedIn is just Ashleen Lord, and link to my website is on there. So my website is Meno hyphen ology, OLOGY.com. So you'll find me there. I do lots of free consultations and things, so feel free to reach out. So yeah, you can reach me there or there. I also have a Facebook page as well. So it's just Meno-ology, and I give out lots of top tips. I'll look forward to seeing you there. And no, thank you. Thank you for being so inquisitive. Thank you for being so supportive. And my husband was the one that actually led me to believe that I was perimenopausal. And I can't thank him enough. He was so supportive and he read lots of books. There are lots of books, so I won't mention any book. I feel a Bridget Jones moment coming on. So I won't mention any particular book. But I do think, if you are a partner, if you are a dad, if you are a husband, if you are a wife of someone that's going through menopause, do your research, and it can make such a difference to her if you're supportive in any way, small ways, big ways. It all helps. It really, really does. So yeah, congratulations to you. Your daughters and your wife is very lucky to have you. Be so
Well, I need to
interested
go.
in the topic.
No, no worries. What a lovely place to end it. And now you've pushed it all back on me. Right, there you go. So I need to go and find some books. I'll see you on the other side. Thanks for joining us today. Feeling curious to learn more about how we help people remember stuff? Well, why not sign up for a free trial of our AI-powered bite-sized learning app, BentoBot? You can do that easily at bentobot.com. And you can catch up on interviews with all of our previous guests by subscribing to this pod via Apple Podcasts or any podcast platform. Till next time, take care.